I'm going to be talking about cognitive development in infancy in the period of 0 to 18 months. Some historically normative milestones are understanding objects, remembering, having intentions, inferring others' intentions, and understanding language. So our knowledge of the world really starts with understanding objects, understanding that objects stimulate our senses and that they are separate from us, including human objects. This is important for the attachment to caregivers and also the development, emotional development beginnings. We need to know that caregivers are real and that they're permanent. Next is remembering/memory. This is retrieving previously learned info. So we can see this through recognition and recall. Recognition has to do with habituation of repeated stimuli, and then recall we can see through deferred imitation, meaning that infants will see an action and then mimic it later on. This is important as it correlates to later intelligence, academic performance, kind of survival, as we have the ability to use previous knowledge to inform our behavior, and then it also supports language acquisition and social learning. So having intentions as early as 3 months, infants can recognize connections between their behavior and different outcomes, and so they can then choose which behavior they want to display depending on what outcomes they desire. And at 8 to 12 months, when babies start talking, they can start verbalizing their desires. This is important as it's linked to intellectual performance, social interaction, and the development of executive functions like goal setting. Next is inferring others' intentions. So from 6 months to a year, infants can understand agency and intention, agency being the ability to act intrinsically, intention being desires or plans. And so they understand that other people are agents just like they are, which is important as they begin to understand other people's feelings and desires. Finally is understanding language. Infant really means lack of speech or lack of complex speech. So as Vygotsky says, language is our most important tool for cognitive growth. We start with crying, and then we're babbling, and then we say our first words like mama. Finally at 2, we have this vocab spurt where we just learn a bunch of words in a short amount of time. So this is important for the continuation of learning, social interaction, and then this is really what propels us to the next stage of development. So next, just thinking about some of the research I did based on my case study and just things I thought were interesting. First, I looked at culture, differences between independent and interdependent cultures, because if you just consider the power differentials or the family dynamics, how they're different across culture, that changes language development. How you speak to elders is different. And then there's differences culturally in the speed of vocab accumulation. That's different sometimes. And then overall, there's just different developmental goals, especially involving language. And so those are important to recognize if you're working with clients who have a different culture than you. Next, I researched bilingual infants. There's a lot of cognitive advantages to bilingual upbringing, especially with attention. In an article I found by a commission and other researchers, they had babies perform eye tracking tasks, and what they found was bilingual infants were able to make more correct anticipatory eye movements. In another article by Brito and Barr, they found a bilingual advantage in memory generalization, suggesting that early experience with multiple language systems may increase memory flexibility. So these are important things to bring up with parents of concerns of their bilingual infant that they're getting behind or they're confused. It's normal for bilingual infants to lag a little bit early on, but they catch up by elementary years. Next, I found a study by Finegood and other researchers involving cortisol, which is cool because we talk about the stress response. So early stress exposure, is linked to negative effects on cognitive development. And so in this article, they found that sociodemographic stress is associated with cognitive development as early as 15 months, which is crazy because thinking about the effects of stress and cortisol on the hippocampus, that it shrinks. Infancy is a time where your hippocampus is developing and growing still. It's also important to keep in mind your client's adverse childhood experiences because more of those have negative impacts on cognitive development as well. Finally, in our case study, we have a single father who's taking care of a baby girl with no mom. So I wanted to see what the impact of that would be on cognitive development. What I found was that fathers are really just as developmentally supportive related to cognitive developments as mothers are. If there's good quality interactions between father and child, it enhances cognitive developments like vocabulary. Also, I wanted to see if there was a gender interaction, and the findings are kind of mixed. So some people find that there's no gender interaction, that fathers treat their sons and daughters quite similarly, and then other people find that paternal care is more influential for boys. So with atypical development, I just decided to do two broad topics just because there's so much going on in this period of life. So the first is lack of curiosity and not reacting, and then the second one is trouble with language. So we know that domains of development affect one another. So if you have delays in physical development, most likely you're going to also have cognitive delays as well. Babies explore and interact with their environment in order to make sense of it. So it's a cause for concern if your baby's not reaching for toys or they don't react to new stimuli. With language, again, Vygotsky says that language is our most important tool for cognitive growth. So if your infant's 8 to 12 months and they haven't made sound, they don't cry, they don't coo or respond to their name, that's also a cause of concern, just atypical. So some things as a counselor that you can do, you're probably going to be dealing with parents coming to you with these concerns. First, take the child's perspective and developmental level into account, then make helpful suggestions based on research, whatever falls under your expertise. You can also help manage parents' anxiety surrounding their infant's cognitive development, I should say, and then connect clients to resources, especially if their child's delays seem to be caused by environmental factors like poverty or poor nutrition. And lastly, just help parents spend more time with their kids, help them find ways to do that because that parental care is a big piece in cognitive development. As Vygotsky says, that experienced learner is really influential. All right, practice item 5.2. I kind of talked about this in the memory milestone, but describe information processing system in infants. We learn info, we store it in memory, and then we retrieve it, kind of like a computer. Next, summarize the patterns of language development during infancy and toddlerhood. So we start crying is our way of communicating verbally. 6 months we're babbling, ba ba ba, da da da, stuff like that. 9 to 12 months we start saying first words or words that are meaningful to our caregivers like mama, dada. And then 2 years, we have that vocabulary spurt where we're learning a bunch of different vocab in a short amount of time. And then we're also able to craft narratives with some help. And then finally, pretty much just by 5 years old, you're able to make most sentence structures. So here's the nugget I'm leaving you today. 2 questions. In what ways do you rely on verbal explanations or abstract language in counseling? And what kinds of cognitive development expectations do you have of infants based on your own experiences, beliefs, or culture? These are my sources. Thank you.